Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Open Concept Podcast, where we are breaking down unnecessary walls and barriers that stand in the way of greatness. Today, our guest, Mark Manderson, not Anderson, Mark Manderson, like Anderson, with an M, joins us today, host of the Recovery Roundtable Podcast, author of The Recovery Way, How to Heal from any addiction and start enjoying life again. My man, Mark, what is happening?
What's up, Brand? Thank you for that intro. It sounds like I actually know what I'm doing around here.
Well, I hope so. It sounds like, to me, it sounds like you know what you're doing, man. I'm super impressed. I've been watching your content lately, and it's been really impressing me. Why don't you tell everybody here a little bit about yourself? I want to hear how you got into the book, how you got into the podcast. Who is Mark Manderson, the man behind the M?
So basically everything in my life has been by accident. I actually came into this world as an accident. My parents say it lovingly, but they're like, yeah, we almost called you Whoops. But we ended up naming you Mark instead. I'm like, thanks, guys. But yeah, it's so funny because the majority of my life, I used to be so afraid of failure and mistakes. And it's kind of been my whole life. So to give you a quick little breakdown, everything I've done have been mediocre. Like in sports, I was just good enough to play. Enjoyed everything that I did, but I was always just kind of in the middle road. And school was tough for me. I barely made it through. And then it was like one day someone started asking, like, have you ever thought about what you want to do? And that freaked me out. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And my biggest fear was, what if I make the wrong choice? Like this whole thing, I remember being raised like, oh, you got to find your purpose. Like Eminem, right? You got one shot. I'm
One
like,
opportunity, baby.
yeah. And I'm sitting there going like, well, I don't know what I want to do. So they actually have a name for it nowadays. They call it failure to launch. But I lived with my mom. I was still in my 20s. My parents divorced when I was 6. And I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. And so my mom lovingly said, well, you can't stay here any longer. And so I wouldn't say she kicked me out, but she definitely helped me move on. And then me being the manipulative person that I am and can be, I'm like, oh, so I call my dad, kind of spin what mom did. He's like, oh, come live with me. So lived there for a while, still didn't know what I wanted to do. There was so much fear wrapped around this. What if I pick the wrong thing? And so finally graduated college, actually found my way in a band. And so we started just playing some shows around town and got a little following and kind of wound up playing out in LA and got some eyes of some talent scouts up in LA playing at the Whiskey and the Key Club and the places where all our idols used to play. Ended up getting a record deal. And so I thought, okay, I guess we're going to be rock stars. And then that whole thing fell apart. And it's so funny because I was so afraid to make a decision that I kind of half-assed everything. And then I was always intrigued by business. So did commercial real estate for a while in Orange County. And this was back in the early 2000s. So it was very easy to make money, but I was miserable in life. Again, going like, I'm not a cubicle guy. I am the worst employee. To give you an idea, my dad's a serial entrepreneur. He was a builder for a very long time. So I'd work for him on summers. And within the first few weeks, I get fired. Do you know how bad of an employee you have to be where your dad fires you because you're that bad?
Yeah. Incredible.
So that was me for a really long time. And eventually, once the band broke up and had all these issues, I started getting really severely depressed and ended up what they call clinical depression. And actually, I remember walking out one day with the intent to end my life. It wasn't that I wanted to die. It was I didn't want to continue to live in this place of pain, thinking that like my life is never going to mean anything or do anything. And so as one of my mentors would help me through this process, he kind of laughed. He's like, man, he says, you're so afraid of failure, yet you failed at the easiest thing to do. And it's a good thing you suck at it because you're still here. And that never resonated before. Like I thought I'm the ultimate failure. I can't even end my own life in a way that looks like an accident. And so just by talking about this kind of stuff, it helped remove the pain because before I stuffed it all. And so just by sharing my story and having people be able to give me feedback that was so outside of the ordinary. Like when my friends would hear I was depressed, everyone did what we tend to do just out of wanting to nurture, like, oh my gosh, it's okay. You're great. You're going to be fine. And that actually unconsciously stokes that cycle. And so of having someone kind of laugh, now he had rapport with me. You don't want to go up to a stranger and do this, but of him challenging my frame and how I was seeing the world as I'm such a failure, I can't even do this right. He was saying failure sounds like a really good thing in your life. In fact, it actually saved you. And that was the first little seed that was planted that maybe failure is a really good thing. And what if maybe we're not all set for just one destined purpose, but there's this, I guess a theory I call it of seasonal purpose, of what if I just go all in on one thing, and some seasons will last a lifetime, other seasons just kind of change. And when I applied that to music, I thought that season, that actually saved my life. It kept me going through a real dark phase of my life, and I got to be with my best friends every day and make music that actually ended up getting on the radio and all sorts of stuff. I'm like, this is really cool. So then it started changing of this calling to help people in recovery and in addiction. Now, I didn't know why. I've never touched drugs, and for the longest time, I didn't know why. I just always had this negative connotation with it. Well, as I got invested in therapy, I found out that I had stuffed this memory of I had one of the coolest aunts. She was the outspoken aunt, was a kid at heart, and back in the 80s, she got kicked out of rehab, and I had a bunk bed in my room. So my mom said, you can stay with us till you figure out what to do. So I got to be the one that got to bunk up with our cool Aunt Steffi.
Yeah.
But what had happened was, I remember one day I came home. This is how repressed the memory was. I can't remember if it was winter, summer. I have no idea. But I remember coming home and seeing her asleep on the floor. And I thought that was really weird. So I actually walked over and started shaking her. And as I'm walking over, I start feeling this crunching underneath my feet. There were pills everywhere. Now, I'm sure as an adult, the memory is probably distorted, but my memory is like thousands of pills just everywhere. And I'm shaking her, saying, wake up, and she's not even moving. So I run and I grab my mom, and my mom ended up coming in and reviving her, thankfully, but then said, you can't stay here, because I had a younger sister too. She said, both of my kids could have just taken what was on there. I can't have you here. Unfortunately, a few months later, same thing happened, but there's nobody there to revive her. So she died of a drug overdose.
Oh, man.
So at that young age, it was, we don't touch drugs. So I kind of thought I was immune to this depression, to the crap that life throws at you. But as I just kind of shared, I found other ways to just totally kind of ruin my life and try to figure out what was going on. So I started feeling this calling. I tell people I was recruited from my creator, but I felt this calling to actually do something so no one else would have to go through that. So for the first 5 to 7 years, just trying to help people and start something, it was just because I was asking questions like, well, why isn't this working? Why is this your 5th time doing this? What do you think happens at night? Why can't you just stop? And by not being afraid of asking the dumb questions, I started getting some really good answers, and I started seeing these themes and patterns. And so that was where I just started studying and reading and going to courses and classes, and just really wanted to help people. And over probably the first 7 years or so, just kind of started developing a program, which I couldn't call it a program back then, but just ways to help, and started actually getting some traction. And then eventually we brought in some doctors and therapists and nurses and all sorts of different things. And we started doing detox, which is someone physically getting off in a safe manner, inpatient residential, which is full immersion 24/7, and then day treatment, which is kind of like college, but without all the poor choices, if you will.
Yeah.
And getting to help them, and then outpatient. And we just started noticing that, man, when we're here, we can help them heal at the core. It's not a drug or alcohol problem. That's the solution. That's the way that they sedate, by helping them get to the core root of the problem and actually heal and do a lot of processing work in here. An organic byproduct is they no longer want to sedate. They end up creating a life that they don't want to sedate or retire from. And that's what I've been doing for the past, say about 1/4 of a century. It's been a while.
Whoa. That's
kind of fire hosed.
That's a wild journey. And you started by saying all of this happened by accident.
Mm-hmm. Just by being open and asking questions. And so we kind of reverse engineered it, of seeing people saying they need more help, and then we'd bring in more help, and then just seeing where the gaps were. And one of the things that I used to think when I was younger, it was actually a learning disability. Is it would be so difficult to learn because everything seemed so complex. And so I had to find ways to take things that were complex to me. Most everybody else understood it, but I didn't. And I would break it down into like anywhere from 2 to 5 steps. I noticed that if I could chunk something down in 2 to 5 bite-sized pieces, I could understand it. Once I understood it, then I could live it. I could lead by living. I could actually teach it. And so that's what I started doing. Probably at year 10 to 12, I would see people come through our program, have the same therapist, the same doctor, sit in the same groups, the same case manager, and maybe one would come in with a few days and graduate within a few days, and I'd call and follow up 6 months later, a year later, and one would be thriving, started a business, got married, had their first child. Life is just so incredible, and the other person is on the streets or back in just couch hopping, sometimes in another treatment center. And I'm like, I don't get it, guys. Like explain to me what happened. And so by asking enough questions, that's where I started seeing a pattern. Those that were thriving were doing small little daily increment lessons every single day in 5 actual areas of life. And those that weren't either were doing nothing in those 5 areas or were solely focused on one area and ignoring the other 4. And so as I started working through this, that's eventually how I ended up writing the book. As I noticed these patterns, I started teaching friends about it. It worked for them. It worked for me. I brought it in the center, started working for the center, and enough people said, man, you should write a book. This, like, nobody's teaching this stuff, and it's so simple. Everything's been so complex. Like, it's broken down in like 4th grade level. And I started laughing. I'm like, that's funny because that is the level I read at and what I've been told that I learn at. And I'd taken 2 speed reading classes in English comprehension, both in junior high and high school, because I was still reading in a grade school level. And it ends up being one of the best things of my life. That I'm a little slower than most people, so I break things down and can make it really easy to swallow.
Man, so much to unpack there. But I think that if you're gonna go over a topic with somebody, in most cases, it needs to be really broken down to the level that they can comprehend. One of my favorite speakers, Jordan Peterson. I broke into his book, We Who Wrestle with God, and I was like, all right, this is going to be a good read. Man, I can't. He just has so many, without a better word for it, just big words. There's a lot of adjectives in there, and I'm like, oh man, I can't read that much. I don't have the ability to comprehend what I think the message is that he's trying to give out, because I'm not at that point where I feel I can receive that message in the way that it needs to receive, simply because I just don't understand it and I have so many other questions.
Yeah, I'm the same way. He's awesome, and I love the memes. But same thing, like him, and same thing with Dr. Gabor Mate. Love his work. I try to understand it. I'm like, it's so over my head. Like, what does this mean? And so that's where I'll take little things, break it down, turn it into either metaphors or analogies, and then I'm like, oh, this resonates. I'll share it with someone else. Like, oh, is that you? I'm like, no, I stole that from Dr. Gabor Mate. They're like, well, that makes a lot of sense. I'm like, how cool is that? We can use other people's information, which he's just pulling from other people. And it's like we're all just trying to figure out how do I break this down in a way that I can actually turn it into application and apply it to my life to now start getting results.
Let me ask you, when you were going through these stages of your life in life, and you had found your aunt, and you had said you felt you were resilient to depression, and you had gone through this difficult thing, and you were going through some hard times, and you felt you had packed in or developed this resilience to it. What was it that did you become fairly depressed yourself? And you mentioned also being really mediocre at a lot of things. When I think a lot of people are really mediocre at a lot of things, and do you think that causes depression, and why do you think that most people are mediocre at most things?
Yeah, so you got a lot of questions there. So let me try to think which one to answer first.
Let's talk about depression first. Was there a point where you found yourself specifically where you could label yourself as depressed, or I identify with whatever was going on in your life as depression?
Yeah, I remember a gentleman with a white lab coat and a stethoscope
They're
said I'm
pretty smart.
clinically depressed. So I went, oh, I'm clinically depressed because a doctor said I was. Now, we come up with these terms to be able to reference, but I think we misdiagnose so quick. So as I started looking at this, was I depressed? Well, absolutely. I mean, I walked out. I still remember that day. My intent was to take my life. I walked out that day with that intent saying, I just want this pain to end. What I didn't understand at the time, and one of the things we teach here is emotions are muscles. The reason why depression was there for me is because that is the emotional muscle I worked out all the time. I would focus on what I don't have. I would focus on doubt. I would focus on uncertainty and fear and all these things, not consciously, unconsciously. And as I continued to work that muscle out, that became my emotional gravity. So I could go ahead and slide into joy for a moment. Oh, that was awesome. And then my emotional gravity goes, oh, this is where we belong. And so I would continue to go there. It took getting educated on how to work out. And this is going to sound weird, but no different than the physical standpoint. It's like when you get a trainer that says, if you eat these macronutrients and you include these micronutrients, the micros will help you feel a certain way. When you eat cleaner food, you feel better, and the macros will show how you look. And then if you work out this certain way, you're going to get really good results. Well, when you don't work out, you don't get the results. When you do work out, you get the results. So as I started to learn this, I thought, well, I keep working out the depression. I don't think I need to work that out anymore consciously. I'm already really good at that unconsciously. What if I started consciously spending time every single morning of action? I call it my morning ritual of working out these different emotions and feelings. And there's a process for this. And I start building this muscle. And what's incredible is as I continued to actually focus on this began to atrophy a little bit. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, my emotional gravity seems to be changing. When I wake up every morning and I do my morning ritual, I wake up depressed, but within about 30 to 45 minutes, I'm actually really, really happy. I'm really joyful. I'm really fulfilled. Now, does anything in my reality change? Actually, no.
Can you walk us through that process?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I've done, because so many people have asked, I created a Google document of my morning ritual. So is it cool if I share it with your crew on here?
Yeah, absolutely.
So anybody that follows me over on Instagram, it's at Pacific Shores Recovery. You just click follow and then you DM me habits. I have a full Google Doc with actual videos in there. It's totally free. And it shows you of what it was that I learned of doing this for multi-decades and seeing what works and what doesn't. And I turned it into my morning ritual that I do every day. Our clients do here. And it's the part that actually retrains and rewires the brain. It's really cool. So
Awesome.
that will go.
I can't wait to check it out.
So that will go in depth. But a lot of, well, let's start with what I don't think works. For some reason, I think it started gaining traction when The Secret came out, but of affirmations and manifestation, which I don't have anything against it. But what I've found is I think there's a misnomer or a disconnect a lot of people think. They think if I just say, like, I'm a good person, then I'll believe it at some point. So I tried that for probably a year or two. There's this part of the brain that can sense when we're full of total BS. I don't know what it's called, but I would say, like, I am worthy, I'm good enough, I'm a badass dude. And there's a part in the brain that's like, yeah, we both know you're not. And I'm like, I don't get it. I'm saying these affirmations, I'm manifesting. I watched The Secret 3 times. Like, what the hell? And what was interesting is there's the part that's missing. And the part that is missing is application and emotional depth. Here's what I mean by that. If I just say, like, okay, I'm a good athlete. I'm a good athlete. The part that knows full of crap. So to overcome that, it's like, what is the application? What am I doing to train to become a great athlete? And then the emotion behind it of actually envisioning myself. So my sport was basketball growing up. So actually envisioning myself, nailing the three, swishing the free throws, actually going and linking emotion to those positive affirmations. Now the brain starts going, oh crap, it's not just something we're saying. We're actually taking action, tangible action, and we're attaching emotion to it. And that's where it's like, it's nailing on all 12 cylinders. You got the brain going, the emotions, the physicality behind it. And that's what seems to really work over just the positive notes to yourself.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they get caught up in the affirmation process because it's It's actually a difficult thing to do for a lot of people to look at yourself in the mirror and say positive things about yourself, whatever that may be, whatever it is that you're looking to change or to overcome. But I think a lot of people have, and I think it's a good first step to even be able to get to that point for a lot of people, depending on where you are in your journey. But you're right. There is this little part of your brain that bullshit meter that just knows that even though you're saying it, it's not true. And because there's probably a lack of evidence to prove that that is true, and there's that lack of emotion behind it, like you were saying, to that, like even though you're really feeling that, you're visualizing it or you're saying it, it's not at that emotional depth that you're talking about, where you can really kickstart and start to rewire your thinking patterns to make a tangible change in your life.
Yeah, I think the actual term for it's conscience congruence. When my conscience is congruent with who I am, that's when we align. But it's so difficult to get there when there's everything going on that's just kind of rattling around. So I'll share this. I was very fortunate back in 2002. I got to sit in on this cool, I don't know if you'd call it. It wasn't necessarily a conference. Basically, we were on a ship. It's called Semester at Sea, and you go around the world. And while you're at sea, they fly people in on, and where you go to one place to dock, the person comes on, and then they teach a few lectures, but they're stuck on a boat. So most people didn't realize, wait, they're on a boat. How do I find them? And so one of the gentlemen, his name was Dr. Patch Adams. He was one of the guest lectures, and he took us through this experience that it was probably the first time that totally like just ripped me open and exposed everything. It's actually one of the things that we do take clients through here for self-exposure. But what you were saying and what I want to hit on is so many times we don't even know who we are. We don't know how to have these types of conversations with ourselves. So it's called the mirror exercise. It's something that's so simple of just going ahead, setting a timer for 3 to 5 minutes, which doesn't sound that long, but you set it and you stare yourself in a mirror in your eyes, but not just looking at yourself, but like literally connecting with your soul. I remember the first few times I did this, I couldn't even look myself in the eyes. I remember I'd start looking at my hair or my eyebrows or certain things, and I was so uncomfortable looking and actually being vulnerable enough. And it's just me being vulnerable enough with myself. And that was when I first really started to understand my narrative, my unconscious narrative is I'm not worthy. Like I don't deserve to be here. I'm a terrible person. I'm selfish. And it's all things that are running 24/7. And the first time I did this exercise, I remember I just started bawling, crying. I'm kind of like, I don't even know who I am. Now, the other side to that, you don't stay in that moment, but it's going, well, what is it going to take for me to get comfortable where I just don't look at myself in the eyes, but actually fall in love with what I see, and not from this egocentric way, but from a place of like, dude, you're badass. Like, this is awesome. You don't have to do anything in this life, and you're still worthy of my love, and you're still a badass. And guess what? We're going to do some epic shit now that we're actually owning who we are. And it's amazing to see the transformation through this.
Incredible. I had a question earlier about mediocrity because you had said you were very mediocre at everything that you were doing. I think a lot of people are very mediocre at what they do, and that drives them absolutely nuts. Right? They never find that gear or that purpose that they're looking for. Why do you think that most people are mediocre at whatever it is that they're doing, and why do you think that most people go through life in that state of mediocrity? Because I think and to sort of tie this in, because I think that can cause some level of depression for sure. If you know internally that you are meant for more, but you have no idea where to even start. And so you continue life the way that it is, waiting for some sign or some signal or some big epiphany to come that may or may not come. And you continue to go through life in this mediocre place, maybe because of the action that you were talking about earlier. But I'd be curious on your thoughts as to why most people, or why a lot of people, never make it out of that place of mediocrity.
So this is what I love about doing podcasts is you get a different answer today in this place, in this state, than you will tomorrow or the next day.
Totally.
So, I mean, if we were to really look at it, because like in all the business groups, people ask, "Are you the best in the world at what you do?" And you hear these guys say yes. I'm like, "Oh, hell no."
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
then
I
what are
know,
you doing here?
I know you're not
Well,
the
I
best.
don't know. Like my brother-in-law was a standby for the last Winter Olympics for the skeleton for Israel. So his goal was, I want to just like, I don't even need to place. I just want to be in the Olympics, like to say I'm an Olympian. And he missed it by a few points, so he was back up. But everybody was healthy, and so they went through with it. But I started thinking, I'm like, wait a minute. So the gold person at that Olympics can say, I am the best in the world at this. The silver person can't say that, and every other person. And so the second part to answer your question is, I believe it's the meaning we attach to mediocrity. If you
Mm.
look at it, because people even ask me now, are you the best at what you do? Probably not. I mean, I invest a ton of time and energy, but I also have a wife and kids that I love spending time with. I also engage in hobbies that I love. I don't know if it would take of like I see monks. I'm like, okay, that's pretty crazy to give up everything. And from the moment you wake up to the moment you sleep, you're dedicated to perfecting your craft. I'm like, that's elite. That's next level. I don't know if I ever will or ever desire to reach that. So, how do I do the best with what I have to create a life? And this is kind of my saying at this
Mhm.
phase in life, but I want to create a life I never want to sedate or retire from. What does that look like? And so that's where I hone in to try to get really, really good at what I do. But by releasing that mindset that I think so many, especially business individuals, have of you got to be the best in the world at what you do, I'm like, well, then that's going to disqualify 99.99% of the people because it's like Ricky Bobby, right? If you ain't first, you're last.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
no, there's second. There's who said that? I remember
yeah.
the
That
first time
doesn't
seeing
even
that.
make any sense.
Yeah. So when I give myself permission to show up as the best version of me, it allows me to continue to grow. And that's really what I think we're after in this life of why we're here is how do I continually expand and grow and be free to be me? Because I feel like we're born in this world. It's wonderful. Like I don't remember this, but hearing these stories, like I used to puke on my grandma and my mom and different people, and I never apologized. It was like, oh, he's a baby. He's just doing his thing. But I still got unconditional love. At some point, we start apologizing for our behavior and we feel really bad and guilt and shame starts to creep in and then we start changing who we are. And it's like, oh man. So ultimately the goal is how do I get back to just being me, not being, a dick to people, but just truly authentically being me and connecting with different people in times like we are right now. Like I'm sure there's a ton of stuff going on in the business behind these walls, but I'm like, I'm totally here right now and I'm enjoying this. This to me is how to live fulfilled.
I love it because you're right. Like there is always that pressure about being the best in the world, and there is that drive. But for me, if somebody's asking if even if I did consider myself the best in the world at something, it's so hard to really understand because you question whether or not you go a little deeper, and even if I was the best in the world at something, it would be pretty difficult for me to actually quantify that because in my mind I'm like, well, I know I can do so much better, so there's got to be somebody else out there doing it better than me. And if I say that I'm the best in the world, then there's really no place for growth. Am I like, is this it? And then how do you continue to be the best in the world? And maybe that's it. Like maybe you had mentioned seasons, and what I loved about what you had said was purpose, right? Maybe it's your purpose for a season, and I think that is a very very cool way to look at things because I think a lot of people spend so much time, or they go through this life of mediocrity, or they go through this stage of depression, or they get really down on themselves about finding their purpose. But that purpose is going to change, likely, with the information that you have and over your lifetime, with the education that you're doing, with the work that you're putting in yourself. You're always going to be changing and evolving, and at some point your purpose is probably going to change. So I love what you said about breaking that down, and what is your purpose for this season, and being able to look at at, when you were in the band, and knowing, hey, that really changed your life, that really saved your life, and that was a purpose for a season that was meant to be. And I think if a lot of people broke down that idea of what is my grand purpose, what is my purpose here in life, like that is a very difficult thing for most people, I would say, to tie their identity to tie their future to. And then even if they think that this is their purpose, well, how do I take tangible steps? How do I take action steps towards actually living in that purpose all of the time? I think it's a very difficult thing to do. But I love what you said about breaking that down into bite-sized chunks back to a point where you can understand it and know, hey, what is my purpose for the day, for the week, for the month, for the year, for these next 6 years, 10 years, whatever that might be, but little smaller bite-sized pieces. I really love what you said about that.
Yeah, and the other thing too is it creates so much undue stress when I feel like I have to arrive somewhere to do something. And then the second part of that you talked about was it ties in identity. And then so, I mean, I remember that, gosh, this was a while ago. I think he's one of 3 people left that's walked on the moon. Had another really cool experience. We were able to see, his name's Charlie Duke. He was one of the guys to walk on the moon. And it was like an open Q&A. And it was just interesting of hearing the questions and asking different things. But I can't remember if he or someone else brought it up, but one of the highest suicide rates of a career is actually astronauts. And I thought that was intriguing. And they said, well, because think about all the training you have to do. You're this elite group. You come back. They actually have, back then it was a ticker tape parade. You're celebrated by the entire world. And then you're kind of forgotten. It's like, oh, what are you going to do now? So there's this identity. And when an individual loses their identity, it's kind of like, well, who am I without this? And it creates this internal stress and conflict and depression. And so we see this a lot, especially here in the center of the identity. But on the flip side and this is one of the parts where so many people want to remain anonymous, which I understand with the stigma, but it's like we have this identity of a person struggling with drugs or alcohol. And it's actually the complete opposite. Like we've had doctors come, we've had chief of fire stations, police, like all walks of life come in. And so that's one of the things that we're really working on, is helping remove the stigma of mental health and addiction, because it is hitting everybody and anybody. And that's one of the things where it's like, man, you're not what you did. Like your identity is not wrapped up in who you were or what you did. The decisions, the behaviors, whatever was made in the past does not control the present to get to the future. So a lot of the work we do is how to release the guilt and the shame. I like to put them together and call it shilt, the shame and the guilt.
I like that, shilt. I'm going to use that.
Go for it. It's not mine. I stole it from a couple other people too. But to release that shilt and to say, I am not going to sit in the shame and guilt. And when we start to talk about it, that pain shared is pain divided. And all of a sudden it's like, well, I created this identity unconsciously. What is the identity I want to create now consciously? And that's part of the work that is just so liberating of this kind of this next phase.
How would one go? Let me come back to my question in a second. But I do know that you see that specifically in a lot of athletes. And you mentioned your brother. Was it your brother-in-law? Brother? Yeah.
Brother-in-law.
Yeah, there was a lot of Olympic athletes, right? Because you train so hard for 4 years or 8
Longer
years,
than
or
that,
whatever it is, and you go for this 1 week or this one shot, this one run, this one skeleton slide or toboggan or whatever that is, and even if you win gold, right? And I think especially if you win, and then you come back, you're like, okay, well, what now? All that adrenaline has you've lost that. Your identity as this gold medalist. You're not going to likely be a gold medalist again, or chances are for most people, they're not going to be a gold medalist again, and then again. So they get tied up in having this gold medal wrapped around their neck for a very short period of time, and their identity for a short time is a gold medal Olympic athlete. Or you look at the UFC, right? You were the heavyweight champion, lightweight champion, whatever that is. But that window to showcase all of all of your efforts, everything that you've been putting in, and everything that you've tied your identity to comes down to a very small window and a very small few moments that once that's gone, separating yourself from this once was to this has been to this totally different person is incredibly tough. Like, why do people tie themselves to their identity so much, and why do people have so many struggles saying, getting past the fact of, hey, I'm an athlete, or I'm a construction guy, or I'm the realtor, and like tying all of that into themselves personally.
Yeah, well, it's a double-edged sword, right? It's like when I take on the identity, I work very hard. As I get that validation, it shows, yes, I'm very good at this. And so the identity continues to self-fulfill. So there are parts of that that are actually fantastic, because it's what allows the elite to become elite, because it continues to force that. So this is why growth can be such a difficult thing, because it's like, well, if I apply it here, it works. If I apply it over here, it destroys. Well, yeah, that's why. It's just like anything in life. It's to not be so tied in, to be able to take a step back and to say, well, let me look at this. Is this serving me? Well, for the Olympian, all the sacrifices they make, yes, it's going to serve me. I'm going to do 4 to 8 years. I'm going to sacrifice everything else. A lot of times it's friendships, going out on family functions because I want to be elite. And then we hit that season, we get that. And this is where a lot of people tie it. They go, I don't know anything different. This has become my identity, as opposed to, this is the season. Here's the outcome I'm looking for. I'm going to enjoy the process, but here's everything that I'm going to put aside that I'm going to go ahead and sacrifice. So now when we come back, it's, okay, who's the real me? Well, I am part Olympian, so I do want to acknowledge that, but I'm not just an Olympian. And that's the part that hits the old, I'll call it the archaic part of the brain, where it's fight or flight. Way back in the day, if we weren't in a tribe, it meant physical death. If we were excommunicated, all it simply meant is, I'm on my own, something's going to attack me, I'm going to die, so it meant death. Well, nowadays, it doesn't mean that. I mean, there's shelter everywhere. I mean, people choose to be homeless nowadays. I'm not saying everybody, but I've known a lot of people. It's like, oh, okay, there's nothing out there hunting us. So now what the brain does, it just says, well, it's still death, but it's more emotional and spiritual death. So the body goes, I have to be something to make sure I'm validated and people will accept me. So that's why when people say mean crap on the internet, it destroys people. It hurts. But that's the old part of the brain that's like, oh my gosh, this is life or death. So a lot of the work that we'll do is we hit pause to create a gap. The science behind it's called the scotoma, but to hit enough of a gap to say, okay, what is it that I'm wanting from this situation? So if I'm triggered by something, instead of that loop of I'm triggered, therefore I'm going to go use, it's I'm triggered, pause. What is a positive behavior, action I can take to meet this unmet need? Oh, I'm feeling discounted. So that's where, okay, what can I do in a healthy way where I will feel counted instead of discounted? So I know kind of got in the weeds on that one, but just wanted to explain the science behind of why we do certain things and why it's difficult, because part of it does serve us, but the other part is still that old, outdated part that we want to upgrade.
I think you need a little bit of that. There's no doubt about it. If you are trying to be the best in the world of something, if you are like, there's a mental, very like big gap between somebody that is the welterweight champion and somebody that's in, sort of sixth tier that's fighting their way up. But to get that, to become that Mike Tyson level of just pure, focus and energy, and really, really operate at an exceptionally high level, you need some of that. Like, you need to be a little bit crazy and a little bit focused in order to make that happen.
Yeah, because it takes sacrifice.
How do people separate that? Because you talked about that a little bit, but how do you have any tangible steps that you could recommend if somebody is really tied to their identity? Whatever they've been doing for the last 10 years, 15 years has become a big part of who they are, and they love that. But maybe that part isn't really serving them anymore, but they don't know how to disconnect themselves from that part of their life.
So a lot of it is self-reflection. Like we tend to overcomplicate things. So one of the exercises we take our clients through is to actually take a step back and do process that. So this might sound weird, but it's like when you actually talk to that part of you. So I'll just use me as an example because I'm an expert in me.
You're an expert in you. Yeah, there's nobody better.
When I was struggling with depression, what I found is the more I would stuff it, like I'm a stuffer, I would just stuff it and it worked for a very long time until it blew up. But as I would stuff, what I didn't know is you can only stuff so much before it just comes out with like a rageful force. And so by actually having a dialogue, so this is the part that changed everything for me. I remember just feeling so depressed it had come back. I thought I worked on it. Work is not something we did, it's something we do. But I thought I had worked through it. And I remember it came up one time, and I don't know what prompted me to do this, but I just asked it a question. I'm like, what is it that you want from me? And I remember my depression, ironically, I named it Hal, and eventually would find out from my mentors, like, oh, of course you did. Hello, shallow Hal. I'm like, damn it, the unconscious is so good. But I just remember asking, I'm like, what is it that you want from me? And I'll never forget, by allowing a safe space to have this conversation, my depression's like, I just want to be acknowledged. Like, here's the crazy thing. You praise joy, you praise love, you praise fulfillment, you praise ecstasy, you praise all these wonderful things, and you don't even let me into the house. Like, I want a seat at the table like everybody else. And for the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, I have abused you. I've been an abuser of you. I've never thanked you. You actually got me through some of the toughest stuff in my life. And I just remember breaking down, just bawling, kind of like, I thought you were a bad thing. You've just been wanting my attention. And that was the first time where I humanized that emotion and actually made it okay. Before, I'm like, I don't want to be the depressed guy, to the point where I would put on masks in front of everybody. Like, I was the front man of our band. Everything was great. We're rock stars. Like, deep down inside, I'm hurt. I'm lonely, even though we're packed out places. And it was interesting. I've finally given it a voice, and it's basically just said that. It's like, first I just want to be acknowledged. And so when I thanked it lifted some. And then when I said, you know what, I want to give you a seat at the table. I don't know why I've labeled you bad and these other guys in my house at my table good. What if I just labeled the emotions as emotions and ask, which one is each emotion trying to teach me, and how is it trying to serve me? And that was the turning point for me that really allowed me to appreciate my depression and actually thank it, as weird as that sounds. Now, I'm not saying to sit in the depression and just be there, be like, oh, I'm just going to be depressed for the rest of my life. No, but because I worked it out so much, and because I denied it and kept suppressing it, continued to push back. But once I gave it a voice, now it just pops up every once in a while and just like, hey, Hal, what do you need from me? Nothing. Just, am I still loved? I'm like, yeah, bud, so much. Like, thank you. Do we need to spend some time together? No, I'm good. Just wanted to say hi, and it just lifts. I'm like, this is the coolest thing. Why don't they teach this?
Why don't they teach it? I know. It's crazy. I go down to the beach every morning. I live down by the water, so I'm very blessed to live where I live. But wherever you are, I mean, you can have a spiritual experience anywhere that's quiet, wherever you can find a space to do that. It's gonna be very different for everybody else. But I go down to the beach every morning with my dog, and I get in a state where I talk to the universe, talk to God, and talk about the things that I'm thankful for. It used to be kind of crazy, because I would go down there, and I remember when I started this, it was very difficult for me to even think these thoughts. And then I was like, why can't I say this out loud? It's 5:30 in the morning down at the beach. There's nobody around. Nobody's going to think I'm crazy. Nobody can hear me. It's windy, but I can't even verbalize what I'm saying. And it started going, very, very slowly, this process of thinking these thoughts in my mind and in my heart. And then I would start to, like, slowly and lowly whisper my thoughts, but I couldn't get it, for whatever reason. I couldn't get it past this certain level of volume. I couldn't articulate this any louder. And now that I'm past that point, I go down, and I get down there, and I'm like, good morning. hey, what a beautiful day. I'm here. I'm excited. Like I've verbalized this stuff. Thank you so much for everything that I have. Thank you for my wife, for my beautiful daughter. Thank you for all of everything that's going on in my world, and even the things that aren't going well. Right? Like thank you for the lesson, and thank you for what I'm learning right now, because I've started understanding a long time ago that whatever is going on in your life, and maybe it's just a switch in thinking, but the idea that everything is happening for you and it's not happening to you for whatever reason that is. I don't drink a lot. In fact, hardly at all these days. And I went out to a friend's 40th birthday party, and I was with friends I hadn't seen, or I hadn't seen them in a long time, but we've been friends since the fourth grade, right? And none of us get to see each other very often. And the party kind of winded down, and it ended up just being the six of us friends from elementary school and through high school, and started pouring a bit of whiskey. We're around the fire. The guitar was out. Like it was just six guys just having fun and just laughing. Like the next day I woke up and my abs were sore because I was just laughing so much. It was a beautiful time. But I remember, like, I woke up in that morning and I was like, man, I didn't feel great because I hadn't had booze in so long. And I had to have that conversation. I was like, thank you for the reminder that this is playing less and less of a part of my life. And although that moment that I had that night last night was awesome, thank you for solidifying my choices so much more clearly, that I don't need that as a part of my life anymore. And so being thankful for these lessons, whatever it is that you're going through, knowing that it is going to be temporary. And I think that that's a really big factor, as well as just knowing that whatever it is that you're going through is going to be temporary. Then you can look at that and you can ask a question and you can be thankful for that.
Yeah,
But I had a lot of trouble even speaking that, even whispering that. I had to like go from those thoughts to slowly whispering, to being able to mumble it under my breath, to now being able to go down and articulate that at a volume that maybe my dog can hear.
Yeah, and that's a total normal experience. I had something similar and started to understand that it's kind of like, wait a minute, my thoughts aren't my thoughts. They're so influenced by everything. So what if I just started to observe them instead of feeling the weight of them? So as different thoughts turn into different emotions and different feelings, I became an observer of them. And what it did is it created enough space where, because I used to be very reactionary, I'd feel a certain way and then I'd do a gut reaction, and it didn't really serve me. And so just by asking these questions that we're talking about, of like, what can I do different? How can I think differently? Going down to the beach, why is it difficult for me to say this? There's nobody around, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, it's the way we're set up for self-preservation. This is the reptilian part of the brain trying to keep me safe. I think at the end of the day, I think we're all just trying to figure out what our insecurities are, and we're so terrified other people will find out. And the irony is the other person is terrified of their insecurities, that I might find it out. So we're going around as insecure people trying to cover up as opposed to our authentic self. And the beauty of it is when I finally start saying the stuff out loud, here's what we find is people go, damn, me too. Me too. And it's kind of like, this is awesome. I can just completely be open, begin to observe my thoughts and feelings, and speak with other men about them in men's circles, share them with the opposite sex and co-ed circles. And it's like, this is so freeing. So now it's kind of like, who am I truly? And the other part that's cool about this is, who do I want to be? Like, we get to create the elite ideal version of us. What does that look like? And when I understand, we're all just trying to protect ourselves and insecure. Now my insecurities aren't as big of a deal as I thought they were.
Is the brain is such a funny thing, right? And I was having this conversation before about intuition and how our intuition is often the best guiding notion that we can use, the best internal compass that we have, but we often don't act on intuition because we have our brain that's there that's making us think and talking us out of things. And I really think that people need to, and I think there's a lot of distraction that's contributing to that, whether it's scrolling on social media. There's so many ads that we get distracted by. There's so much stuff in your face. You don't know what to trust. I look at AI, right? You're looking at implementing AI into your company. You don't know what application is out there, what to trust, what's a bot just telling you to use this program. You like the amount of trust that is out there. It is very, very small, and it's very, very difficult to gain trust. And I think that the brain really picks up on that. And I think less people are really in tune with their intuition. Maybe they're in tune with it, but they are not going to act on their intuition because the brain has been trained for so long to talk them out of doing whatever they know needs to be done, whatever might be right, or even whatever might be wrong.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I just saw 2 studies that I think were published somewhat recently that correlate with this. So one was that they're finding, I believe it's Gen Z. But anyway, they did a study and they're saying they trust more of what they see on social media than what a doctor would tell them. So I thought that was very interesting. And then one of the other ones is this one's very recent. They're saying that I think it's over 50% of what AI is telling you is actually incorrect. And so I don't know how true that is, but when I saw, I didn't read the actual article. I just saw someone said, hey, did you see this new study that came out? 50% of the AI is not, like, it's actually incorrect information that we're starting to base things off of. So, but what you said, kind of bringing everything that we've talked about together is there's this brilliant doctor. I remember reading his book years ago. It's called The Heart Math Solution. It's Dr. Childre. And so what they did is they would hook up EKGs to the heart and EEGs to the brain, and they would see they're 2 different wavelengths. So they're actually disconnected of complete different frequencies. And this doctor found that as you actually, they call it heart breathing or heart math, as you breathe through your heart, it takes, I think, 2 or 3 minutes. The waves, the sine waves actually sync up and come into perfect harmony, the brain and the heart. And they find this is where it's called heart coherence, where we make the wisest decisions. We can solve problems we couldn't solve before. We can love deeper. We emote at a much deeper level. And so that's one of the aspects of just slowing down the breathing process, picturing you're breathing through your heart, because I forget who said this. I'm sure it's been abused a ton, but they say when you're in your head, you're dead. And so it's like, if I can sync my head to my heart, we tend to get completely different feedback. So anytime I'm feeling depressed, I have that conversation. Or if I'm going, hey, Hal, I'm not able to talk right now, you do the heart math, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I actually feel at peace with you. We're good. And we can revisit it later if we need to. But most of the time, that coherence, it's like, hey, life is really good right now. This is awesome. I just needed to align myself.
The imagination and the mind, the brain, like it is vast, right? And you can have any thought in the world that you want to, but we can find our thoughts subconsciously. Like a lot of times it's tough for us to expand our thoughts, but we find, like, in this very small parameter, we have a ceiling and we have this little shell, and we just have all of our thoughts in this tiny little space. And for us to think outside of these neural pathways or these thoughts that we have that keep circling over and over and over again is crazy to me, because the imagination is so vast. You can literally think of anything in the world, yet we don't, because we're tied to whether it's going to be our experiences or the doubt that we have, or what we've heard, the conversations that we've had, the people that we've been interacting with, whatever's contributing to that. We have this very small, I don't know how to describe it, but there's this very small reach in our thoughts. And I just find it fascinating, because it's infinite. We can think whatever we want, but we don't. We can feel however we want, but we don't, because there's so many other factors that are really depressing and compressing the thoughts that we can have, or the feelings that we can feel.
Yeah. We tend to live in a a constant state of stress, which keeps us in the fight or flight. So that's part what you just explained. We do part of our morning ritual. We actually we call it silent and solitude, of actually sitting and allowing the thoughts to just kind of go wherever, whether it's I call it communing with Christ or my creator, divine downloads. People call it whatever they want, meditation, prayer. But as we actually allow the brain to start doing things, eventually, again, it's a muscle. It starts saying, here's where we want to go. And then it becomes so clear. It's really cool to see after like 60, 90 days of doing it every day with consistency, how it really retrains and rewires the brain. It's pretty cool.
Are you still playing music?
No, so our band broke up right before our
Because I didn't
album.
know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that you were a musician or playing music before. So that was news to me, man. That's super cool.
Well, what's so funny is we'll have people like, "Oh, is there any YouTube of you?" It's like, this was before YouTube. "Oh, are you on Spotify?" Before Spotify. What about the internet? It was right when the internet was coming out. Like, I just totally aged myself. But we had an album that went out, so like it is out there, but it's pretty funny. Actually, now that you say that, I got to dig up some old photos and start posting those
There's gotta be
because,
something like an MP3 from Napster or something that was picked up and
well,
is
and
like
that's what is
digitally
so
just out
funny
there.
is we ended up signing, like we met with, so it was really cool. We're in LA, we have a showcase. There's Sony, Geffen, all these different labels, and Phil Spector Records. This was before the huge trial that happened, and we ended up going with an indie label. And it was a fun phase of life, but our whole thing was distribution was Tower Records and Virgin. And so we're like, yes, we did a deal on a handshake. This guy just wanted to be the fifth member. We were known for our live performance. We had a bartender on stage, blows fire. Like, we were just a rowdy bunch of college kids.
Yeah.
And so we just finished our album, and that was, I think it was when Tower announced bankruptcy and they started shutting them all down. We're like, we still got Virgin. And then Napster came out, got really big. iTunes came out, and Virgin shut down. And we're like, well, I guess that's the extent of our career. And we just kind of gave up. It fizzled out. But in our minds, we were rock stars.
Hey, yeah, you're still a rock star in my mind. You're just a different type of rock star. But you
There
know
you
what? That
go.
was like you said though. That was a season in time, and that was a very cool thing. What was going on in your mind? I mean, I can see you out on stage at that point, just having a great time, and you see that a lot. The rock stars, and there's movies about it, right? It's the rock stars that go out, they showcase, they're having a blast, but they come back and they're drinking, they're depressed, they're just not, they feel unfulfilled and empty. But this is really just an outlet and more of a facade. Was this a time where you were having when you were in a depressed state as well? Was this going on, or was this like
Yeah.
genuinely a really happy place for you?
Well, it was mixed. And that's why I don't think there's really black and white. There's so much gray. So it allowed me a place to escape life and where I was the person that everybody validated. So, like, I created a character, and it was awesome because I could be seen for how I wanted to be seen as opposed to the fear of all the insecurities. So, yeah, about our earlier conversation, I mean, my identity was, I'm the front man of a rock and roll band. This is awesome. And then as soon as the show's over, it was like back to feeling totally alone and lonely, and just, it was really intriguing. Like, going back, going through all this work and looking back, I'm like, wow, I'm glad I was that way, because if I wasn't on stage, I'd probably be doing other dumb stuff that probably would have had really bad consequences. So it's just interesting looking back of the character I developed and had this facade and felt the validated. So the insecurities went away until finally it was gone. It was like, oh, I guess it was a form of sedation. It was a very fun one, but now we got to face this stuff, and then doing the work. And now the work is so much more fulfilling than just trying to sedate it.
I think you mentioned the black and the white, and I think even when we tie that into business, there's so many decisions that we make that are black and white. We have procedures for things. We have conversations that we need to follow, and procedures and this and that, and how we handle certain things. But there's so much magic that happens in the gray, right? And that's something that can't necessarily be trained for. That has to come with experience and that intuition that we're talking about. right? Because I think you can make decisions and look at things in black and white, no problem. But there is some of that magic that happens in the gray, and
Yeah.
that's a space that I'm very curious about.
Yeah. Well,
The
it's
uh,
no
the
decision is still a decision. So when you make a decision, you can always course correct.
That's very true. Yeah, not making a decision is still a decision, and you can certainly move on with that. Right. And I love what you said though. Being on stage, you were this person that you wanted to be. You were this character. Do you think that there's harm, or do you think it's a good thing if somebody is trying to change themselves to put themselves out there as the person they want to be? Are they harming themselves, in your opinion? Like, if you wanted to be this very fit person, you wanted to be known for, let's use, gym influencer, right? If you're out there putting yourself out there as this either gym, you're out there working out, or you're driving a flashy car, but you can't afford it. But like, this is the person that you want to be. You're just not quite there yet. Is there power in stepping into that person and being this person, or is that sort of a charade that's going to cause some internal damage? Like, is there power in, I wouldn't say pretending, but
Right.
being
No,
that
I think I get what you're
character?
saying. So I think it's case by case. If, like for me, I was doing it for other people. I was doing it to try
Mhm.
to hide something. So my desired outcome was I don't want to be seen for me, so I'll create something that I think other people want. So in my case, it was unhealthy. Now, the other part of that is what I've learned over the years is I can borrow off of my future self. So I can actually go out in the future, say, who do I want to become to be able to hit this goal or to do this? And then I can borrow that right now to say, okay, here's the decisions and choices this person makes. And it's for me, not necessarily a facade or trying to get validated by other people. So I think it's really case by case. If the person says, am I doing this because I enjoy it and I'm excited about who I'm becoming? Then, hats off to you. If you're doing it to try to make up for shortcomings or to try to hide certain characteristics, that's the part where I'd suggest, look deep inside, maybe try the mirror exercise, see what comes up for you. Because when you're in tune with your consciousness, it provides a lot of value for you if you're willing to sit in the pit and listen.
There's a lot of weight behind the intention of what you're doing, I think.
Oh
Because
yeah.
if you're trying to be a better version of yourself to serve other people, then you're going to continue to do that. But if you're trying to become a different version of yourself because you really, you don't like yourself, you can't stand yourself, but it just becomes empty after a while, and it's probably not something that's going to be sustainable if you don't have some sort of deeper purpose or meaning behind whatever it is that you're trying to do.
Yeah. What's the intention behind the action?
My man, Mark, hey, where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you? Your book, we'll put a link to that too. You mentioned where people can find you on Instagram. Is that the best place for people to connect with you?
Yeah. So if you guys just want to chat or get more information, at Pacific Shores Recovery on Instagram, and just DM me habits, I'll send that to you. Or if you just want to engage in a conversation, go ahead and chat me up. The book's available on Amazon, and then our website, if you do know of a loved one who might need some help, is pacificshoresrecovery.com, and we have all the information on there, the doctors, the therapists. So those are probably the three ways.
Tell me a little bit about the podcast, the show that you have as well.
So it started out of just wanting to highlight case studies. So we first started with a 1-year follow-up, then a 7-year, a 12-year, a 16-year. Actually, just talked to someone who has a 20-year case study and just been sober 20 years, as a pillar in the community. So it started out of just kind of where are they now, and to show that this does work. If you do the work, it works. And then it started just kind of changing, and other people wanted to come on, and we started having a couple actors or celebrities reach out to say, well, one came through our program. I'll let them share their story there on one of the podcasts. And then just a couple other people said, man, I love what you guys are doing. Can I use this platform to just kind of share? And so it's stories of just total transformation of some of the craziest backstories, where it's like, here's what I love about all of us. My pain is the most real to me, and I think I'm the most messed up. And then when I hear other people sharing even more messed up stuff and see them do even cooler things than me, I'm like, man, we can all change. This is awesome. So it's stories of total transformation, and it just gives people hope of what's possible when you do the work.
I love it, man. Mark, hey, thank you so much for coming on today and spending some time with us. You're doing amazing things. And you said something in the very beginning, like, thank you for introducing me, because it makes me sound like I know what I'm doing. I can't say it enough, man. After this conversation, I know even more that you know what you're doing. I want you to know that.
I appreciate that. It's funny. I just had a conversation this morning with someone, and it's funny because it's like, man, the more I learn and actually get more knowledgeable, the less I find out I actually know. And it's this beautiful cycle that just never ends. So it's like I know more today than I did yesterday or last week, but I actually feel like I know less now. And it's a beautiful thing.
The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Brent. It's been awesome being on here. Excited to just get to learn more about you, hear about you, and share my story with you, man. It's been awesome.
Awesome. Love it. For all our listeners out there that are still with us, until next time, rock and roll.